Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this lunchtime seminar organized by the SingHealth Medicine Academic Clinical Program, Office of Medical Humanities. My name is Kun. I'm a consultant under palliative care from National Cancer Center. Before we start, just a reminder that everyone, if you have any questions, please do type into the chat box under the Zoom function, and the questions will be answered at the end of the session to prevent disrupting the presentation. And your mics will be muted as well throughout the session. So without further ado, let me introduce Ms. ROSE GOH. ROSE is a Senior Manager, Clinical Pastoral Care. She heads the Clinical Pastoral Care Department at Mount Alvernia Hospital. She has a wealth of experience in providing psychosocial, emotional, and spiritual support to our patients, families, and staff as well. She's trained in clinical pastoral education and has 15 years of experience in the healthcare setting. We work very closely with seeing patients in RCC hospice. Rose, please.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I wish to thank Dr. Ong for inviting me to share with you all on what it means and makes us human through the lens of clinical pastoral care. Before I begin with the presentation, I would like to share a quote by Henry Nouwen, a priest and author who wrote many inspiring books. He was very in touch with the human condition. When we honestly ask ourselves which person in our lives means the most to us, we often find that it is those who, instead of giving advice, solutions, or cures, have chosen rather to share our pain and touch our wounds with a warm and tender hand. These are the contents of my talk: clinical pastoral care, spirituality, religion, personhood, and humanization, addressing pastoral needs in challenging situations. Clinical pastoral care is an embrace of the heart. It is a commitment to stay with the other person and to see the journey through. Being pastoral is a disposition. It is an attitude we bring to our interactions with other people. Being pastoral simply means having a heart for another and being completely with and for the other, through and through. This disposition impacts us as healthcare workers in two ways. It impacts us outwardly in the way we work with the people and the people we work with. Hence, our relationships with fellow staff members, patients and their families, or caregivers are all affected by our pastoral disposition. It is also directed inwardly on ourselves. It is this movement, a pastoral disposition, opens us up to being more fully engaged with other human persons and therefore to becoming more fully human ourselves. Being pastoral is a way of being, in how we carry ourselves, be in touch with who we are and how we live our lives. It is also a way of relating, in how we connect with others, being sensitive and responsive to their needs. Now, the founder of Clinical Pastoral Care, he was Reverend Enter Bolson in June 1925 in USA. He was a pastor and came from a family of pastors. Through his own personal experience and life journey, he found a path that was central and integral to the human person and healing the human heart. He came up with a model of connecting heart to heart to reach deep into the human spirit and bringing healing and restoration. The model of clinical pastoral care comes from spiritual companionship, where we walk with the person in the ups and downs of life and stay with them through the journey, offering them a safe space to be vulnerable and feel secure that someone trustworthy is present to be with them through it all. What is clinical pastoral care? It is about compassion, love, understanding, and comfort. We respect the dignity, culture, and practices of each person, regardless of race or religion. We address their emotional, spiritual, and religious needs. It is a person-centered and considers all angles in respect to the individual's best interests at heart. It is being a spiritual companion and spiritually holding a person in our heart as we walk with them. It also reveals to the other that he or she is important to us and that no issue or problem is too big for us in our care for them. As human persons, we belong to a family of humanity. We may come from different backgrounds, education systems, nationalities. However, what is intrinsic within the family of humanity is that we have the same needs. There is a category of needs that is central to us humans. They are meaning and purpose, relationships, forgiveness, hope, creativity, transcendence. Talking about creativity, we all need platforms and avenues to express what is within us, our thoughts, our emotions, and we find according to what works well for us. Transcendence, some of us have faith traditions of faith that we believe in, that keep us going. There are some that do not embrace a particular faith. However, have lived life embracing a set of values or belief systems that frame our whole outlook of life. These enable us to accept ourselves as we are and to experience peace within, no matter what stage of life we are at, be it young or old, healthy or sick, rich or poor. How we apply ourselves to these categories may differ from person to person. And if I may add that we have joined the healthcare service as the call to serve the sick and make a difference in their lives that give us meaning and purpose. We all have relationships, and we know the importance of these relationships to our lives. Just looking at these two categories would already help us to understand that we have the same needs. I wish to share a story to highlight on the theme of relationships and hope. We all have familiar relationships, and relationships within families is integral and important to our well-being. Unfortunately, for some of us, we may not enjoy such good relationships within the family setting. In this story that I'm going to share, I will talk about how I journeyed with a female patient, let's call her Madam Tan, and how I supported her towards a journey of wholeness and hope. I remember I was approached by a doctor, a geriatric specialist, to join the family conference. During my subsequent visits to Madam Tan, I provided empathic listening, emotional and spiritual support. She looked sad, sometimes teary, and did not wish to speak. I held her hands and offered a compassionate presence by assuring her I was there for her, even though she knew I would not be able to take her problems away. Madam Tan, a devout Christian, shared with me about her husband's infidelity towards her, and it caused her much grief and sadness during that time that lasts to the present day. She had further shared with me how her children were more interested towards inheriting her fortune rather than caring for her in her old age. This caused her much heartache and disappointment with her children. In several of my interactions with her, this was a common theme which kept resurfacing, and I listened to her with empathy, allowing her to air her grievances and sorrows. In clinical pastoral care, we believe in allowing one to share their story freely and acknowledging their emotions in our presence, while providing a safe and secure space in their moments of vulnerability. In one of our conversations, an opportunity arisen when she brought up the topic about her faith journey. It was during this time that I shared about Christ's unconditional love for us. She was able to find value in the redemptive suffering of Christ, and it took upon herself to imitate Christ in her relationship with her husband and children. And it was through this journey that she was able to experience hope amidst despair. This was how I had the privilege to journey with Madam Tan. I motivated her to adopt positive religious coping. Example, we talked about redemptive suffering and united her suffering with Jesus and offered it to him. Helped her to secure a relationship with God, such as deepen her faith with God. For example, I asked her, did something happen to her loved one and managed to overcome the incident? She shared about when her second daughter met with a car accident and was injured. She was very scared and worried. And all she could do was to pray to God. And she was thankful that God answered her prayers as her daughter eventually recovered from her injuries. I facilitated her past trials and tribulations as her husband's unfaithfulness and her children's greed of her health. And I helped her to anchor her faith, to give her strength and a sense of hope, a sense of spiritual connectedness with others, reminisce about her courtship days with her husband and the growing up years of her children. And she found comfort in those joyous moments. The importance of listening without judgment to what she truly means is essential to the core of the human spirit. Sadly, Madam Tang has recently passed on. Being pastoral. The heart is a place where we keep what is most intimate close within. And it is also from the heart where we feel and express a variety of emotions, especially according to the circumstances we find ourselves in. For example, people who are experiencing illness, be it acute or palliative, and depending on where the patient is at in the particular state of life, there will be emotions experienced. Poor health causes one to feel a vulnerability and concern, as there is discomfort. The normal routine of life affected and mortality surfaces. Depending on the person involved, it is important to meet the individual where they are at. Hence, for the healthcare worker, it is integral that we are aware of our own wounds and affect us. Our preconceived thoughts on how a person should cope with the situation free our heart space to completely embrace the other as our own, to feel with them and to feel for them. Hence, being pastoral is a disposition because it focuses from within us, how we are aware of our own journey, our value systems, and our way of being and relating, and from which we are better able to be well disposed to our patients' and families' needs. It is from this self-awareness grows the ability to embrace the other person wholeheartedly. Compassion is understood as having the qualities of patience and wisdom, kindness and perseverance, moved by sensitivity, especially through the suffering of another, to help the other to the extent of elevating it. Empathy is the emotional experience of another person's feelings. It is experiencing how the other party feels. Take, for example, a friend's deep sadness, and the reflection of it would be tears flowing down my cheeks. I would like to share with you a code blue alert situation which a family was not prepared for. In this story, we review what it means to hold a pastoral disposition in supporting the family through their difficult moments. I responded to a code blue alert at our 24-hour clinic and emergency services. This patient was accompanied by his son for a routine checkup at one of our specialist clinics, and suddenly he collapsed and resulted in a code blue alert and was sent to our 24-hour clinic and emergency services. He was a male, 70 years old. I shall address him as Mr. Lee. His son Peter was standing at a corner in a daze, wondering what was happening and was trying to make sense of the whole situation. At the same time, all the doctors and nurses were rushing to the room to resuscitate Mr. Lee. Peter started to narrate the incident to me. He was in a state of shock. He felt anxious and helpless. I acknowledged his emotions. He then shared with me that he was the only son and that his mother was on the way to the hospital. Peter began sharing the possible reasons that caused his father to collapse. I listened to him attentively, offering him a safe space to air his thoughts and gave him support. Subsequently, Mr. Lee was transferred to ICU. His wife arrived shortly. She was also in a state of shock and fearful that her husband might die. All I did was place my hand upon her shoulder, as I believe that presence precedes words. In the next couple of days, Mr. Lee had 2 surgeries, and both went well, and they were relieved and hopeful that he would gradually recover. The doctor informed them that Mr. Lee had to wake up on his own within 8 days. It was during this time that Peter shared with me of how he had to manage his father's business amidst circuit breaker and not having the lasting power attorney to manage his father's affairs and put things in order. As his father's workers were not allowed to work during circuit breaker and with the climbing medical bills, Peter was worried. It was at this time that I shared with him that it was a delicate moment for him, and it wasn't easy to manage all of this on his own. Peter was grateful that he could speak with me as he had no one to turn to. Now, this gave him a comfort and assurance that he could continue to do all he could for his parents. I assured him and his mother of my continued support and affirmed them of their love for Mr. Lee. After 8 days, Mr. Lee did not wake up and was declared brain dead. Peter and his mother were teary and they said their goodbyes. It was a very sad moment for them when Mr. Lee passed on. I conveyed my sincere condolences. They were appreciative of my support amidst their grief. Being pastoral is a disposition, an attitude in our interactions with Mr. Lee's family, because it is important to listen and being with them in their sacred space. A disposition from within and an attitude we adopt. We have heard of the cliches, do not judge a book by its cover, and I'm unable to wear your shoes. Now, these cliches have a deeper meaning behind it, and it refers to the inner person and the life they are living. We are people who are sensory by nature, and experience allows us contact with another. Through experience and in our interactions, we come to know a person. We have the intellect that allows us to possess knowledge. People are also colored by first impressions. However, knowing a person, truly understanding him or her, goes beyond our experience or knowledge of the other, as the individual person is so much more, and their life experience, background, faith tradition, culture go into making up who the person is. Hence, coming into an encounter with this person requires a listening of the heart. For the heart is the life source of the human person as it pumps blood to the brain to help it function. The heart allows us to feel with, feel for, and connect to the other person. With the brain, we have the temptation of overthinking, using logic, rationalizing, and coming up with solutions. Whereas with the heart, one is able to stay with the other completely, provided we allow ourselves the opening of our hearts to know there is more to the person than what we think he or she is, and understanding that the shoe they wear cannot be understood by our human brain or sensory faculties, as is or her life experience is so much more than we can ever imagine. We respond with a skilled ministry of the heart. That is, to try to understand what patients really want and not what we think they want. It is about staying with the patients in their ups and downs, especially the pain of everyday living. A patient may share his or her joy when he or she just heard that the diagnosis is treatable, or a patient may share about her guilt and of not being a good mother. We stay with their feelings and emotions and try to step into their world, as pastoral care is all about not having any preconceived ideas or expectations, but rather embracing whatever comes and allow the patient to lead, holding him or her in their sacred space. We help patients take control of their situations. For example, a patient may ask, "Do you think I should seek a second opinion?" I would reply, "Have you discussed it with your family? What did they say?" I will allow the patient to articulate how he or she feels and empower him or her to come to an informed decision. It is about praying when others can't. We do not impose prayers on our patients. We only pray when initiated by the patients. Not necessarily all Christians are ready for prayer, as each Christian has a different level of relationship with God. Spirituality comprises of religious beliefs and beyond, exploration of universal values, love, compassion, altruism, a way of living, a set of principles, a set of belief systems, recognition of a feeling or a sense that there is something greater than ourselves. Now, spirituality is a terminology that has a broad definition connected to the human person. A connection that is in relation to a particular faith tradition, in looking at the world around us, in relating with one another, in the way one approaches his or her work, an attitude that one possesses, the characteristics within one's personality, and how one serves others. From our spirituality, it speaks about who I am and how I live my life, and it encompasses oneself wherever we are. Spirituality also connects us with self-growth and embracing universal values and transcendence. Spirituality connects us as beyond ourselves to what is around us. If we look within the human spirit, there is a deep reservoir of depth within us. Innately lies the ability to connect and explore how our lives are enriched and contributes to our overall well-being. A journey of self-discovery helps us to understand what nourishes us and enhances our strengths. And it also helps us to be in touch with our self-esteem and how we look at ourselves in relation to others and the outside world. It is a journey towards self. We are born into relationships within a family setting. We are social beings, or where we need to socialize and connect with others. The cliche, no man is an island, it reveals a truth that we are interdependent and interconnected with one another. We can think of moments when we are feeling down and we need a listening ear, and how we feel uplifted. This connects us to others. We have heard of marvelous sights like Blue Mountain and Grand Canyon, and it speaks of the beauty of creation. People travel to these places to marvel at the beauty of it. It affects us effectively and affectively as our emotions are aroused, and it changes us from within. It brings healing to our spirits and soothes it. We suddenly feel renewed, recharged, and rejuvenated. For creativity is a gift expressed differently by different people. People who have artistic talent express it through art, others through the gift of writing, some through writing songs and music. Now, creativity is a platform that one can use to express what one is feeling from within, the emotions one is experiencing. It is also a skill or gift one possesses to express what cannot be put into words. It offers another dimension to one's life and is therapeutic. It brings healing with it too, either for oneself or for others, though through what has been created. Religion is about ascribing to a religious belief and adhering to the faith tradition guides us in our way of life and well-being. It gives us the comfort and security that we are not alone and that there is a higher power watching over us, guiding us in our daily life. Transcendence is a recognition that there is a greater power beyond creation. Some call it God, some deity, some higher power. It helps us to recognize that as humans, we have limitations and there is something bigger than ourselves. Religion, conception of God, deities, conception of well-being, ethical teachings, beliefs about after life. I have this patient, a gentleman in his 40s, who had 2 young children whom I journeyed with at RCC Hospice. In my first encounter with him, he shared with me, he said, Rose, I do not drink, gamble, or womanize. I pray often and attend church regularly. Why must this be happening to me? I'm the sole breadwinner and my children are still very young. Where is God when I need him most? My reply to him was, yes, sometimes we do wonder where God is when we need him most. I visited the patient regularly, sometimes just sitting beside him without saying a word. After more than a week, the patient suddenly asked if I could pray for him as he was unable to pray. He also requested for a priest to give him special blessing. We normally embrace religion and have a faith relationship with God because we would like to live a good life and receive blessings and graces. This is our conception of what constitutes our faith beliefs, our well-being, who God is, and the teachings that guide us in this life and the afterlife. The grace to be a supportive presence and identifying completely with how he felt and what he said had allowed him to arrive at a place of peace, where he could make reconciliation within himself, in his relationship with God that he had requested for me to pray for him. Religion is a faith tradition that one embraces, either from childhood or through an encounter with the faith, and makes a commitment to it. A faith tradition expounds on ethical teachings that help us in our way of living. It anchors our life and the faith tradition and its values and aligns us towards it. Religion may be institutionalized, where there is a hierarchy with organizational structure, and worship is with its rituals within a community setting. Ultimately, religion guides us in our way of life with altruistic values in the here and now, and some faith traditions teaches us about life after death. Personhood. Aristotle, a philosopher, recognized what is distinctive to people, powers of reasoning. St. Thomas Aquinas, a philosopher, combined three functions: nutritive, sensory, rational. And for Catholic understanding, Pope Benedict XVI has said, specific distinction between human beings and animals is God has made us humans, capable of thinking and praying. Personhood explains the essence of the human person apart from all of creation. Humans are the apex of creation. Plants and animals in the order of creation has their own cycle of life. The animals have some similarities to humans in their cycle of life. What differentiates us from animal is the gift of our intellect and the 6 central themes that I mentioned earlier, such as meaning and purpose, relationships, forgiveness, etc. And that connect us as a family of humanity. What distinguishes us from animals is our intellect and free will, an ability to rationalize and process information and knowledge. This enhances our ability to make a wise decision according to the needs and context of the situation and what it holds. 8 stages of psychosocial development. Now, this model was proposed by Erik Erikson, a developmental psychologist and psychoanalyst, which some of you may be familiar. It speaks of each stage for a particular age group of the resulting outcome for the personality development, be it positive or negative, dependent upon the encounter and the other or the situation one may find oneself in, or how the process leading to the outcome may be, like trust versus mistrust, birth to 18 months, autonomy versus shame, 18 months to 3 years, initiative versus guilt, 4 to 5 years, industry versus inferiority, 5 years to 12 years, identity versus role confusion, 12 to 18 years, intimacy versus isolation, 18 to 40 years, generativity versus stagnation, 40 to 65 years, ego integrity versus despair, 65 years to death. Life unfolds over a period of time, and in this journey of life, we acquire experiences in life, growth in knowledge, and wisdom to be the person we are today. Each stage is significant in the building up or the gap in our personality development through our growing years, from the moment we are born till the moment we pass from this world. I believe all of you would have heard of Abraham Maslow. He was an American psychologist who came up with a model of humanity on fulfilling innate human needs in its rightful order. He divided it into 3 main categories with 5 subcategories. The 3 main categories are basic needs, psychological needs, and self-fulfillment needs. The subcategories are physiological needs, talking about food, water, warmth, rest, etc. Safety needs, security and safety, belongings and love needs, intimate relationships and friends, esteem needs, prestige and feelings of accomplishment, self-actualization, achieving one's full potential, including creative activities. James Fowler was a pastor who developed a theory on stages of faith that people go through as their faith matures. There are 6 stages. Stage 1, intuitive reflective faith. We see preschool children at this stage. Stage 2, mystic literal faith. These are the school-going children. Stage 3, synthetic conventional faith. These are the teenagers. Stage 4, individual reflective faith. It is rare for people to arrive at this stage. This is where people begin to realize the limits of logic and start to accept the paradoxes of life. Stage 6, universalizing faith. Very few people arrive at this stage. Those who do live their lives to the full in service of others without any real worries or doubts. Sacredness of life. We have come to understand that as human beings, life is sacred and everyone is important. And also that there will be moments where we experience vulnerability and frailty of a human life. Now, life is a precious gift we have been blessed with and carries with it an inherent dignity as human beings. The call to serve in healthcare as doctors, nurses, and allied healthcare workers is a privilege, as we have the opportunity to touch hearts and make a difference in the lives of others. Being healthcare workers is a gift and responsibility, as people who are unwell with various diagnoses becomes vulnerable with us, opening up themselves and their life stories with us, their fears, anxieties, shock, worries, etc. Their families are not exempted from feeling these emotions. They too become vulnerable, though their vulnerability differs from that of the patient. In our course of work with our patients and families, it is important to be in touch with our own life journey, our life experiences, our growth in our faith tradition, our spirituality, our joys and sorrows, our important relationships, and relationships that are yet to be reconciled, and hopes yet to do or accomplish. This is central as to allows us to be aware of where we are at in our life journey in order to be aware of the life journey of others, especially our patients, when they receive difficult news of their health condition. When a patient is terminal, deteriorating, dying, or has died. Let me share with you some of the interactions between doctors and patients, like how to convey to a patient with terminal illness. Let's call her Madam Yo. Say, you're a doctor. Say, Madam Yo, I'm Dr. John. I'm here to care for you and to share with you on your health condition. Understand that you are experiencing pain in these areas and cause you much discomfort. We can look at the various types of medication to help you manage the pain. May I know what you understand from your illness? So allow her to express or to say how she described her illness. Then you can say something like, well, that is right. If I may share a little further in what your health condition entails and understand what we are looking at, we can then approach the care plan and type of treatment needed. If Madam Yo starts to cry, just stay silent. Allow her to cry. Do not spontaneously hand her the tissue paper unless she's looking for it. When Madam Yo is calmer, assess the situation and address her emotions first, such as, this must have been a shock to you, and it must be very hard for you. Listen to her on what she has to say. From there, allow her to talk and take the lead. And our response has to be aligned to what she has to say, to help her feel heard and acknowledge that she is important. From there, you can list out what is important to her and the types of treatment and goals of care. Now, I'd like to share a different scenario where a patient's condition is deteriorating. Say, Miss Lee, I'm Dr. John. I have been caring for your mother. These days, she has not been experiencing these symptoms, and it's also a sign that her health condition is deteriorating. This period is critical and will encourage your family and anyone whom your mother wishes to see to spend time with her. When a patient is dying, Mr. Tan, I'm Dr. John. I'm sad that this is a critical period for Mrs. Tan. When a patient experiences these symptoms, it usually means that a patient is actively dying. I will encourage your family to share their heartfelt words like, I love you, thank you for all that you have done for me, please forgive me for all the wrongs that I've done. Do not worry about us, we will take care of each other. Now, heartfelt words like these would give her comfort. Just continue to be present and available and assure them of your assistance and support. The world views success of an individual as being useful, having something to offer and contribute, having the package to be successful. However, this feels like an object where we use it for our benefit. We discard the object when it is no longer useful. This should not be so, as every human person is not to be viewed by the success of the individual, by the credentials of the individual, or what the individual has to offer, but rather by virtue of being a human person, with a dignity that is sublime, and with a heart that feels the full range of emotions that one feels. Every human person should be treated with respect and reverence. When an individual becomes ill with sickness, an injury or debility, it causes one to feel the vulnerability, frailty, and mortality of all of our human condition. Therefore, when we reach out to an individual suffering from a health condition, a sensitive heart, an attentive ear, an open hand, an uplifting word, a compassionate gaze will embrace a person fearing the worst from his or her health condition, offering consolation, security, and comfort in their time of need. There are some difficult questions that patients may ask as they come to terms with their own health conditions. If I may, I would like to share with you some of the responses to the patients or their families. For example, if the patient asks the doctor or asks you, am I dying? So let's address him as Mr. Chan. Mr. Chan, you have been through so much with your health. It has been a difficult time for you. Just acknowledge what Mr. Chan has to say or has said. If it's something positive, acknowledge and affirm him. If what he has said refers to a fear or negativity or regret, address the emotions by highlighting the emotions felt and await the response from him to help him acknowledge how he feels. From there, the conversation continues. Continue to explore with Mr. Chan and allow him to take the conversation, so to lead the conversation. Finally, assure Mr. Chan and say, Mr. Chan, I agree with you that this journey is a tough one, but be assured that you are not alone in this. Your loved ones and I will go through this with you. A doctor may ask, Doctor, how much time does my mom have? For a doctor to respond will be, Miss Teo, I can see that this is a delicate time for you and your family. Looking at her symptoms and the progress of the disease, she has about 3 to 4 months. Then listen to Miss Teo's response. Address her emotions and concerns and assure her that you will work with your team to ensure that she is kept comfortable all the time, more so during this period of time. How would an allied health member respond? Then say that, as I am not a doctor and won't be able to answer your queries, may I suggest that you speak with the doctor in charge. I can assist in connecting you with the doctor in charge. Then listen to Madam Teo's response. At the same time, you can also gently inquire if she or her family has any concerns or needs and reply accordingly. There are questions who may say, I don't want to die yet, can you help me? Just pause for a moment and say, I hear you. It must be very difficult for you to say this. It sounds to me you have a strong desire to live. Listen to his or her reply. If given more time to live, what would you like to do? What are your hopes and dreams? Then listen to his or her reply. Affirm his or her hopes, dreams, or a list of things to do. Then perhaps you can just say, okay, perhaps we can look into it and see what we can do to facilitate the wishes you have shared. Or the family member can say, I can't live without her. What can I do? Then you can say, I can see you love her deeply. It must be very hard for you. Pause and wait for a while. This period of time that you share with her is sacred and precious. If I may ask, what are the things that she enjoys doing and will make her happy? Perhaps it would be nice to do it together. In doing things as a couple, it creates precious memories together that will strengthen your bond that will continue to live forever in your heart. Or another patient may say, to ask for another loved one, can you give her an injection at any all? Yes, it is indeed painful to see your loved ones suffering, especially before your eyes. It is hard for you to watch her in this state and being unable to do anything to bring relief to her. The sense of helplessness can be so frustrating. Then just wait for her reply. You may add on, administering an injection to end it all, or euthanasia as it is called, is forbidden in Singapore. We will do our best to control the symptoms and keep her comfortable at all times. How to break bad news? The essentials are compassion, empathy, allow silence, allow tears as crying helps, or a comforting touch. For example, I'm sorry I have some difficult news to share with you. Or, I'm sorry that what I'm going to share with you is not the outcome we have been hoping for. It must be hard for you to hear this piece of news. Or, I see you have been quiet. May I know what are you thinking? Or, I see you've been quiet. Would you like to share your thoughts? Clinical pastoral care is about companionship, person-centered. Our ministry approach is that of entering into a relationship with each other, builds trust, communication, and understanding. Common humanity. We all belong to a family of humanity where we experience at different moments of our lives grief and loss along with joy and success, wholeness and vitality together with frailty and lethargy. These bond us in our humanity. Being pastoral occurs when we respond personally and relationally towards those in our care. When we give our full attention to the other, listen attentively, offering our ministry of presence, being with and for the other. Let me share an encounter with my journey with a patient whom I shall call her Madam Lim, a Taoist. She had a complicated family background and was hurt in many ways that had shaped her into who she was as a person and patient. Madam Lim was divorced and her daughter was brought up by her ex-husband. She was estranged from her mother, whom she hoped to reconcile with. Madam Lim was also estranged and isolated from her family. Amongst her 6 siblings, she was very close to a brother whose life was unresolved and that deeply affected her. One of her wishes was to own a house, but was unable to. She struggled between her health condition and what her best friend told her that her time was not up yet. She had problems at her workplace. She worked till she fell ill. In my encounter with her, she was someone determined to fight the disease, prolong her life, and did not seem to have accepted her condition. Even as I'm aware that the clock is ticking and time is not on her side, I'm conscious of remaining present to her and allowing her to air her views, emotions, and beliefs. Clinical pastoral care for me is akin to being a spiritual companion. And if my patient is in a dark hole, I will jump into the dark hole to be with her. I found that the rapport and trust built with her through allowing her to share her story, just allowing her to be, had helped her to accept the reality. From there, she was able to surrender to the reality of what was to come, to the point that when her family members visited, she did not resist them, but rather found consolation in their visits and accompaniment in her time of need. It was also during this time that the openness to meet with her ex-husband and his wife and her daughter in person. She managed to reconcile with her mother. This would not have happened without her feeling safe in Assisi Hospice. She had a peaceful passing as she had this reconciliation where it all came together for her. We embarked on a journey with the patients and their loved ones, encouraging them to share their stories and giving them support in whatever way that is meaningful to them at that given point in time. Talking about last wishes, let me share with you a patient that I met at Assisi Hospice. He was about 70 years old, a Christian, married with an adopted daughter. Because of his condition, he was extremely frustrated, sad, and teary. He kept telling me he wished the doctor could give him a jab and end his life, as he could not do anything, but just lying there not able to walk. I said to him, Mr. Yo, it must be very hard for you to be feeling this way. If you could stand up and walk, what would you like to do most? He replied, while his eyes lit up. I would love to dance. He shared about his exciting younger days and he learned how to dance the rumba, cha-cha-cha, etc. He shared about a local drama that was shown on TV at that time. It featured his favorite actress, Joanne Pei, who was learning to dance in that show. He said he wished he had a chance to meet with Joanne. I decided to contact the TV station, and to our pleasant surprise, Joanne said okay. I remember it was a Friday at about 10 a.m. We did not inform the patient as we wanted to give him a surprise. When the actress, Joanne, walked into his room, the patient gave a puzzled look. He turned to me, his jaw almost dropped. He said, have I died and now in heaven? I said, no, you are in your room. He was very happy and touched that the actress, Joanne, made time to see him despite her busy schedule. They had a short chat. He died 2 days later. I helped his family with the funeral arrangement. Our actions must come from a place of understanding that fully includes the other in order to move towards quality of life for all. It is love as a disposition of the heart and a commitment to the mind that prompts the move to inclusion. It acts of compassion to keep that heart space from which we reach out in solidarity with those who suffer. As you have heard by now, being pastoral is not a particular faith-based approach alone, but a journey that we embark into together with our patients and families. As you can see in this picture, this young couple was distraught to see their child fighting for her life and being helpless. As we journey with this couple, we learn that they are of the Buddhist faith and know what this faith means to them. We have invited Buddhist monks to pray for their child. They came from abroad and the parents shared that their daughter came without shoes. In wanting to ensure that the child has all her needs provided, her parents told me her favorite color was pink. So I went to purchase a pair of pink shoes and a matching hairband. Being pastoral embraces all people of all faith traditions and those who do not embrace any particular faith because of the importance and dignity of the human person and the human heart. If you find that during the course of this talk, there are too much contents to remember, here are some take-home messages in a nutshell. Clinical Pastoral Care embraces all aspects of the human person. Spirituality connects us beyond ourselves and is expressed through beliefs, values, traditions, and practices. Religion ascribes to a religious belief and adhering to the faith tradition in guiding us in our way of life and well-being. Personhood and humanization manifest humanity as apex of creation and the personal processes of growth that a human person can grow in psychosocial faith and needs development. If you find that during the course of this talk, there are too much contents to remember, here are some take-home messages. Each person is unique with an inherent dignity. We are interconnected with one another. It is important to be aware of our own personal journey, the call of the human heart to serve and care for one another. Compassion, empathy, and care connect hearts and build trust. As part of my conclusion for this talk, I would like to share with you a beautiful message from Pope Francis for all of us serving in the healthcare setting. This message from Pope Francis on the World Day of the Sick. Life must be welcomed, protected, respected, and served from its beginning to its end. Both human reason and faith in God, the author of life, require this. Your professionalism, sustained by Christian charity, will be the best service you can offer for the safeguarding of the truest human right, the right to life. When you can no longer provide a cure, you will still be able to provide care and healing through gestures and procedures that give comfort and relief to the sick. That's all for my talk. Thank you very much for listening.
Rose, thank you so much. I think you have given us so much insight about the topic of pastoral care, as well as concrete examples about difficult conversations that you have with patients and family members. And of course, you have given us examples of how to respond as well. I think that's really very valuable for all of us. We are having about 5 minutes for questions, and I can see that the audience have really been very interested and engaged, asking a lot of questions about the nature of pastoral care, as well as certain questions about how we respond and how it affects our own well-being also. So let me just choose one or two to answer. Okay, I think a consistent theme that I'm hearing is that pastoral care is applicable for everyone, regardless of their faith. Pastoral care is actually about patient-centered care, about personhood, about finding meaning as well for the patients and their family members. So I think the first question is, how do we practice pastoral care or ensure that pastoral care remains secular, such that it is actually applicable regardless of whether it's in a hospice, in a Catholic hospice, or whether it's in a hospital, and patients who are from different faiths, or even if they have no religion, can actually still benefit from that.
Okay, thank you for the question. Yeah, pastoral care applicable to everywhere, any settings, not necessarily healthcare settings. And as I mentioned in my first slide, we respect all religion, we are inclusive. So when we visit our patients in the hospital and RCCs, regardless of their race or their religion, we will visit them. And that, as you say, how do we apply? It's very important will be the presence, the compassion, the empathy, and the words we use, it has to be empathetic. And empathetic listening, being attentive, is also very important. It's very important for this person, patient, or even a client that you're talking to, that this person feels heard and that no other distractions is going to interfere with whatever your conversation you have with this person. I hope that answers your question, because Dr. Ong, a bit hard to hear, quite soft for your info. Thank you.
I think that is a reasonable answer, and I think from personal experience as a physician as well, I actually have no concern when I refer my patients who are non-Christians, non-Catholics to pastoral care, simply because the need to seek meaning, personhood, I think it's applicable to all of us, regardless of religions and faith. And patients who have no religion can be very spiritual as well. So like you say, I totally agree with you, that's applicable for everyone. Okay, the second question, and probably the last question, is, of course, we have heard a lot of difficult conversations that sound very intense and probably very emotional as well. So how do you and your team take care of yourselves and continue to
Very good question. Thank you again for this question. Self-care is very important. We have to care for ourselves before we can care for others. So it begins within ourselves. Okay, for us, like in our team, before we start our work, before we go to the wards, we will spend the first 15 minutes in quiet prayer and reflection in our chapel. So that is the most important part for us. Then before we go on, and how we care for ourselves. Okay, like for myself personally, I like to go for walks after dinner. Exercise to me is very important. And then, of course, in between, we need to have breaks. So we do sort of share with our colleagues. Sometimes there are certain scenarios that was a bit challenging. So we share that. And also proper rest, food, and sleep. I sound like a doctor, right? That's very important. Thank you.
Thanks, Rose. We have 2 minutes, so I'm just going to ask a quick question, right? Do you actually have a network whereby you know which are the hospitals or institutions who also have pastoral care services and how to refer to them?
Okay. Frankly speaking, Mount Alvernia Hospital and Assisi Hospice, we are the only 2 institutions that have clinical pastoral care. We have a dedicated team of clinical pastoral care counselors that reach out to all patients. Other hospitals, not naming them, but they have tried. They came to me and I gave a presentation on clinical pastoral care. They were very interested. They wanted to, but somehow it didn't materialize. So to answer your question, no, I don't have any other network for us to talk to anybody else in other institutions.
Sure. So I guess the hope is that the participants today will also take the message back and see whether they can develop something and collaborate with you as well in future.
Sure. I welcome their collaboration. I look forward to hearing from them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Okay, thank you everyone for your attention. We have reached the end of the webinar. I know there are a few questions that have not been answered yet. So if you have any questions that you want us to answer after this, you can email us at this email where Rose and I will look through and reply to you directly as well. So no worries about that. Okay, any last burning questions or comments before we close? Okay, the recording of the webinar will also be available on YouTube. So we'll let you know about the link as well. So thank you everyone. It's been a pleasure experience listening about all the experiences from Rose and the narratives. It's really been very fruitful for me. And I hope you guys have learned something as well. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you for listening.